I sent the message right after the wheels left the runway. No dramatic punctuation, no plea for attention, just flight lands at 3:05 p.m. Can someone pick me up? The cabin hummed around me, a soft chorus of vents and seatbelts and strangers breathing. On my screen, the group name glowed, Carter Family. 3 circles under it for the people who taught me the difference between saying love and doing it. My mother, my brother, my sister. I added nothing about why I had been gone. I did not attach. The reply came before the plane found its smooth climb. We are busy. Try a rideshare. 2 minutes later from my mother. You should have planned better. That was all. No, how are you? No, are you safe? No, I am sorry. The words were as clean as cut glass and just as cold. I watched the city fall away through the oval window and understood something I was pretending not to know. You can be related to people who would leave you on a curb. I typed back one sentence. No worries. My thumb hovered a heartbeat longer than pride, then I hit send and turned my phone to silent. The flight attendant passed with a tray of water cups and a man across the aisle asked for napkins. I thanked her and pressed my palm to the place in my bag where the urn lay, not as a secret, but as a promise. Somewhere over the mountains, the sun found a break in the clouds and laid a narrow road of light across the wing. I followed it with my eyes and let my breath even out. It helped to remember that not every absence is a loss. It helped to remember that I had already made other plans. When the captain announced our descent, I powered my phone and watched the little icons rush to fill the screen. There was nothing new from the group chat. No correction. No, wait, we are coming. Fine. I slid the phone into my pocket and felt the quiet settle into a place inside me. The pilot banked us over the plains, and the runway lines rose up like ruled paper, waiting for a sentence I would not write. They did not know who would meet me. They did not know what I had carried home besides the ashes. They did not know why 3 names in my contacts had stars beside them now. I looked out at the gray runways reaching like pages and decided to let them learn the way I had learned. In silence first, and then for good. They thought I would drag my suitcase to the curb and wait, but I had arranged a different welcome, one built on promises, not biology or nostalgia. Outside, Denver waited, colder than memory and cleaner than grief. The plane's wheels kissed the tarmac with a dull thud, and the passengers around me sprang to life. Phones on, seatbelts snapping, bags yanked from overhead bins. I stayed seated, my hand resting on the small carry-on beneath the seat in front of me. The flight attendants smiled their practiced goodbyes as we filed into the jet bridge, the warm, recycled air of the cabin giving way to the sharp bite of Denver's late winter wind. Past the terminal windows, families clustered in tight knots. I saw a boy break free from his father's arms to sprint toward a woman with flowers. A young couple held hands so tightly, it was as if the hours apart had been years. None of that was for me. I had known it wouldn't be. My family had made that clear at 35,000 feet. I walked past the baggage carousel, past the automatic doors that sighed open, and out into the muted chaos of the arrivals lane. My coat collar was high against my jaw, the urn's weight steady in my bag. And then, there it was. The black SUV I'd been expecting rolled to a slow, deliberate stop by the curb. The rear door opened before I could reach for it. 3 people stepped out. Not in uniform, not in suits, but in that clean, unmistakable plainclothes presence that says authority without a badge showing. 2 women and 1 man, federal agents I had met only weeks before, in a conference room overseas that smelled of stale coffee and tension. Rachel, the taller woman said, using my first name like an anchor. Welcome home. Her eyes flicked to the bag at my side, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was, that the most important thing I carried wasn't clothes. The man took my suitcase without a word, while the second woman reached for the small locked case in my other hand. She held it with care, not curiosity. We'll get this where it needs to go, she murmured. Across the lane, a camera crew lifted their gear toward us. I hadn't been told the press would be here, but apparently the agents had planned for everything. I didn't flinch when the lenses turned my way. Let them film, let them wonder. As I slid into the SUV's back seat, the taller agent leaned in and spoke low enough that only I could hear. Everything's in motion. You won't have to wait long. I met her gaze. I've already waited long enough. The door shut with a solid thump, cutting off the wind, the noise, and the airport's endless comings and goings. Through the tinted glass, I saw the camera still tracking us. I knew, those images would find their way to the people who had left me stranded. And when they saw who had met me instead, they'd realize their absence was only the first part of the story. That night, the city's 6 o'clock news cut from the weather map to a shot I recognized instantly. The curb at Denver International, the black SUV, the agents at my side. The anchor's voice was measured, the way they speak when they want you to hear every word. Today, federal investigators confirmed the arrival of key evidence in a multi-state fraud case with suspected international ties, she said. The evidence brought back from overseas by a civilian cooperating with the FBI's Victim Services Division was escorted under protective detail to an undisclosed location. The footage rolled. There I was, stepping out of the SUV in my black coat, hair pinned back, the urn strap across my chest. One agent lifted my suitcase. Another carried the small locked case, white security tag fluttering in the cold wind. They slowed the clip to catch the moment I placed my hand on the agent's arm, just a brief touch, and passed her the case. The anchor continued. Sources tell us the courier, identified only as R. Carter, is a single mother who recently returned from settling her late father's affairs abroad. Federal authorities have declined to comment further, citing security concerns. It lasted less than 45 seconds. But I knew exactly where those 45 seconds were about to land. In the Carter family group chat, silence. No thumbs up. No where are you? No questions at all. 10 minutes later, a private message from my sister lit my screen. Was that you on Channel 7? I didn't answer. The segment was already online, picked up by smaller outlets hungry for anything tied to the FBI. Comments poured in beneath the clip. She looks so composed. That's what courage looks like. Single mom. Absolute hero. The agents had warned me this would happen, that visibility was both a shield and a target. I wasn't worried about strangers' opinions. I was thinking about the people whose approval I had once bent myself to earn. People who had left me at a curb without a backward glance. At 9:30, my phone buzzed again, this time from an old high school friend. Saw you on the news. What's going on? I sent back. Just came home. It wasn't a lie. I went to bed knowing that my face, my name, half of it anyway, was now floating in living rooms and phone screens across the state. And in 3 particular living rooms, in 3 particular hands, that image wasn't just news. It was a mirror, one they couldn't look away from. By morning, the clip had spread beyond the local news cycle. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years sent links with wide-eyed emojis, though I ignored most of them. What caught my attention wasn't who reached out. It was who didn't. The family group chat remained a dead zone. The last words still my polite, no worries. At 10:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from social media. My mother had posted an old photo. Me at 8 years old, in a denim jumper, standing between my brother and sister at the county fair. We were smiling at the camera, cotton candy in our hands. Her caption read, "Family first, always." I didn't have to comment. The internet did it for me. The top reply, already liked over 200 times, came from a woman I didn't even know. Then why didn't you pick her up from the airport yesterday? The thread devolved from there. Speculation, defense, and a few flat-out accusations. My mother deleted the post within the hour, but by then screenshots were making the rounds. Just after noon, a text from my brother appeared. Didn't realize it was that serious. You should have said something. I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as the words I wanted to send flashed in my mind. Grief doesn't send invitations. Instead, I typed, "You made your choice. So did I." Then I put the phone face down and went back to making coffee. At 3 o'clock, the taller FBI agent called. "They might start asking questions trying to reach you directly," she said. "Until this part of the investigation is over, it's safer if you don't engage." Not a problem, I told her. And it wasn't. What they didn't know, what no one outside the Bureau knew, was that the case wasn't just about some abstract criminal network overseas. The files in that locked case connected dots that led uncomfortably close to home. Not to my mother or sister. To my brother. His employer's name was in the documents, tied to contracts my father had signed years ago. That knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, heavy but unmoving. I hadn't told the agents about the text he'd sent me. They didn't need to know.
Not yet.
That evening, I opened my curtains and watched the neighborhood streetlights flicker on one by one. Somewhere, my family was sitting in their living rooms, maybe scrolling past comments, maybe pretending not to read them. They didn't realize this wasn't just a public relations mess for them. It was the first ripple of something much bigger. And it was coming whether they liked it or not. 3 days later, the call came from a New York number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said answer. "This is Melissa Grant with Horizon News." The woman's voice was warm but crisp, like she'd spent years balancing compassion with deadlines. "We'd like to invite you to sit down for an interview. A piece on single parents who have played key roles in major investigations. Your story, it's compelling." I almost said no. For weeks, I'd been guarding my silence like a shield. But silence, I'd learned, doesn't just protect you. It can also protect the wrong people. "I'll do it," I said finally, but on my terms. We taped the interview in a small, unadorned studio in downtown Denver. No dramatic backdrops, no mood lighting, just a round table, 2 chairs, and a microphone that picked up every breath. Melissa started gently. "What happened when you landed?" I didn't rush my answer. "I came home with my father's ashes in my bag," I said. I sent one message to my family asking for a ride. The replies told me they were busy, or that I should have planned better. So I walked out of that airport alone. Only I wasn't alone. Melissa leaned in. "The agents?" I nodded. People who didn't owe me a thing showed up anyway. That's what family is. Presence, not bloodlines. I didn't name my mother, my brother, my sister. I didn't have to. Anyone paying attention already knew. But I did say this. Sometimes the people you expect to show up are the first to vanish. And sometimes strangers will carry the weight you thought was yours alone. For 6 uninterrupted minutes, I told my story. No theatrics, just the steady truth. I spoke about being a single mother, about leaving my son with a trusted friend so I could settle my father's affairs overseas, about discovering evidence in his files that the authorities had been searching for. When the segment aired that night during primetime, the response was immediate. My phone lit up with messages from strangers, widows, single parents, veterans, sharing their own versions of an empty curbside greeting. Offers of help poured in from people I'd never met. The family group chat stayed silent, except for one change. My brother renamed it from Carter Family to simply Group. No apology, no explanation. Just the quiet reshaping of something they could no longer pretend was whole. I didn't mind. They were trying to shrink the space between us, but I'd already stepped out of it. And the world outside was suddenly a lot bigger. The days after the interview felt different, like the air itself had shifted. Strangers stopped me in the grocery store, at the gas station, in the school parking lot, not with pity, but with something like recognition. One woman pressed a grocery receipt into my hand with her phone number scrawled on the back. "If you ever need someone to pick you up," she said, "I'm here." It was humbling and unsettling. I didn't want my name to be a headline that faded into a week-old story. I wanted it to do something. The idea came late one night, while I was folding laundry in the quiet after Noah had gone to bed. I thought about all the people who had written to me, all the comments from others who had been left standing alone when they should have been met with open arms. I thought about that curb at Denver International, how cold the wind had been, how heavy the bag had felt. And I knew. The Gate Project was born in that moment, named for the one place everyone passes through when they come home. Our mission was simple. No one should walk out of an airport alone after surviving something life-altering. I started with a small post on a local community board calling for volunteers willing to greet people at airports, bring a meal, or drive them home. Within 72 hours, my inbox was overflowing. A retired teacher offered to coordinate rides. A young mechanic said he'd donate oil changes for free. Someone from 3 states away mailed me a stack of handmade welcome home signs. By the end of the first week, we had a spreadsheet of 30 volunteers across 5 states. Someone donated a used van. A cafe owner in Aurora offered her event space for monthly meetups free of charge. The first mission came sooner than I expected. A woman in her 50s flying in from Phoenix after finishing a year in witness protection. Her daughter had reached out, saying she couldn't get time off work to meet her mother's flight. I gathered 4 volunteers, all wearing matching navy jackets with the Gate Project stitched over the heart. We stood at the gate holding a sign that read, "We've got you." When she stepped into the terminal, she froze, her eyes darting between us and the sign. Then she started to cry. I took her bag and said softly, "You're not alone anymore." That photo, her hugging me with the sign in the background, went viral overnight. Donations poured in from people I'd never met. In the middle of it all, a PayPal notification pinged on my phone. An anonymous $500 donation. The sender's email was generic, but I knew. My brother. The same day my voicemail light blinked, my mother's voice came through, rougher than I remembered. "I didn't know how to help. I didn't think you'd want us there. I'm sorry." I deleted it, not in anger, in peace. Because the help I needed was already here, and it had nothing to do with the people who once left me standing on the curb. The invitation came from a local victims advocacy group, a candlelight vigil on the courthouse steps to honor those lost to organized crime. They wanted me to speak, not as the woman from the news, but as someone who had carried a story others could see themselves in. It was a crisp evening when I arrived, the kind where breath clouds the air and the glow of candles feels like a living thing. Rows of chairs were set up, each one holding a small white candle and a program folded neatly on the seat. People milled about quietly, the low murmur of voices broken only by the occasional strike of a match. When my turn came, I stepped up to the microphone. The crowd fell still. "I didn't plan to be here," I began. "Not here in front of all of you, and not in the position that brought me here. I came home carrying my father's ashes, and I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that the people I counted on most wouldn't even meet me at the gate." A ripple of recognition passed through the audience, some heads nodding, some eyes lowering. But I wasn't alone for long. Strangers showed up. Agents showed up. People who didn't owe me anything stood where my family should have been. And in their presence, I learned that family is not about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up when you don't have to ask. I talked about the Gate Project, about the first welcome team and the stories that had poured in since. I didn't name my mother or brother. I didn't have to. When I stepped away from the mic, a woman in a long wool coat approached me. She clasped my hands tightly. "My niece. She was one of your first welcomes. You saved her from walking out into nothing." Before I could reply, movement caught my eye. At the far edge of the crowd, just beyond the reach of the candle's glow, stood my mother and my brother. No sign, no candle, no approach, just watching. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I simply let the space between us stay full of everything they'd never said, and everything I no longer needed to hear. They stayed until the vigil ended, then turned and disappeared into the night. And for the first time, I realized their absence no longer hurt. It only confirmed what I already knew. I had built something stronger in their place. The Gate Project office used to be my dining room. Now it was stacked to the ceiling with welcome kits. Blankets, travel pillows, prepaid phone cards, snacks, and handwritten notes from strangers who wanted someone to know they mattered. Volunteers came and went all day, their voices and footsteps turning the house into something that sounded alive again. On quiet nights after Noah went to bed, I'd sit at the table with my laptop, answering emails from new chapters opening in other states. The project had taken on a life of its own. It no longer felt like my story. It belonged to everyone who had ever stood alone at a curb and wished for a different ending. The family group chat remained archived. I never reopened it. Not because I was angry, but because it had nothing to offer me now. My world had grown beyond those 3 names on a screen. Then, one morning, an envelope slid through my mail slot with no return address. Inside was a clipped article from a financial crimes bulletin. A Denver-based contractor, my brother's employer, had been formally named in connection to the fraud investigation tied to my father's old files. My breath caught, not from surprise, but from the quiet confirmation that the agents and I had been circling the same truth all along. I scanned the article twice, then tucked it into the folder I'd kept for the bureau. That afternoon, I mailed it directly to the lead agent with a note. Thought you'd want this for the record. No flourish, no satisfaction. Just closure. Weeks later, I stood at Denver International again, this time with a team of 6 volunteers. We were meeting a young woman coming home from a year in rehab, her mother too ill to travel. She emerged from the gate clutching a small duffel, eyes darting like she expected no one to be there. When she saw us, smiling, holding a sign with her name, her shoulders dropped and her lips trembled into a smile. I walked forward, took her bag, and said, "You're home." In that moment, I understood something I wish I'd known standing at that curb months ago. You don't rebuild by waiting for the people who left you to come back. You rebuild by becoming the person you needed and offering that to someone else. I still catch myself wondering what my mother or brother think when they hear the Gate Project mentioned on the news, when they see photos of our teams holding signs and hugging strangers. Maybe they feel regret. Maybe they don't. But by the time they realize they are no longer part of my story, I will be too far down the road to turn back. That is the real lesson. Sometimes the justice you get isn't in punishing those who failed you. It's in replacing their absence with something so solid and bright that their shadow can't touch it. And when I lock the office at night, hear the quiet hum of the street outside, and know that tomorrow another flight will land with someone waiting to be met, I feel it deep in my bones. I am never alone again.